Famcast Media, bitch.
So we got some terrible news coming out of the state of Arkansas. Now, for weeks, I've heard about several different states, mostly red states, that were planning on, proposing anti-trans bills. One of them was Arkansas. I know Tennessee was one I spoke about, and I think it was also, was it Minnesota or Wisconsin? It was one of those Midwestern states that I had spoken about. It was about the transgender athlete bill. Well, just recently, this was actually yesterday, there was a bill called HB 1570, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, it's a bill that would prevent, children that identify as transgender from receiving, hormones and any other type of, receiving required medical treatment. Now, the good news is that Governor Hutchinson decided to veto the bill, claiming that, it was an overreach of government. And this is rare, but I kind of agree with him. It's not often I agree with the Republicans, but this guy is right when he says it's an overreach of government. Well, here's the bad news. It's passed anyway. Basically, the Republican Party voted to override the veto, and now it's considered law anyway. So when it comes to Arkansas, I mean, this is history, bad history, but Arkansas is literally the first state to ban transgender people from receiving required medical attention. That means no hormones, no injections, or anything like that until you're over the age of 18. I have an article right here for you. I'm going to read through this together because this is absolutely disgusting and terrifying. It's going to have a lot of long-term and devastating effects. So the headline reads, Arkansas faces a trans exodus after passing 3 anti-trans bills in 3 weeks. Jacqueline Middleton has lived in Arkansas for most of her life, but she plans on moving away from the state as soon as possible now that state lawmakers have passed through 3 anti-trans bills in 3 weeks. But it's not yet clear where she will go or how she will manage building a life away from her current support system and everything she has ever known. It's heartbreaking, Middleton told Insider. It makes me stressed. It's activating my fight-or-flight response. The latest blow came on Tuesday when the state legislature approved a ban on puberty blockers and hormones for trans minors, and cut off access to any medical care or affirmation from medical health professionals or school employees until they turn 18. Governor Hutchinson vetoed the bill, calling it a vast government overreach, but the legislature had enough votes to pass it through without him. The governor, though, is hardly seen as a trans ally. He previously signed a bill banning trans girls from girls' scholastic sports, and a sweeping religious exemption for healthcare providers who can now turn away LGBTQ patients for non-emergencies. Middleton, a 23-year-old trans woman, transitioned while attending Southern Arkansas University, but had to drop out after several people in the small college town threatened her safety. She struggled to find a job since, describing how she'd showed up for interviews and employers would realize she's trans and lose interest. Then last September, Middleton caught COVID, which led to developing tenosynovitis. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. An inflammatory disease that affects her wrists and thumbs. Now on Medicaid, she worries about losing access to the hormones keeping her dysphoria at bay. HB 1570, the law banning transition care for minors, bans state funds from being used to fund transitional care for all trans people. So state funds towards Middleton's Medicaid will no longer cover the hormone she needs to survive. The ACLU has promised to challenge the law in court, but trans people in the state are following the develops with dread. For Middleton, the anti-trans healthcare bill was the last straw. I have to go somewhere where there are people standing behind me, and that's not here. I would be willing to endure this if it felt like there was any chance I could overturn it. And if I can't overturn it here, I'll go someplace else. Insider spoke to several trans people living in Arkansas who said they were contemplating moving out of state. Last week, while the governor was considering how to respond to the bill, cutting off healthcare for trans kids, Evelyn Rios Stafford, a justice for the peace in Fayetteville in Arkansas, an openly trans elected official, said she had a 40-minute meeting to discuss how the measure would impact trans people in the state. Honestly, she's worried, she said of what she told the governor. They don't know what else is coming down the pipeline, but finding a trans-friendly place to live could prove complicated, given that other states have taken up similar bills to one passed in Arkansas. Middleton has considered Illinois the nearest state not currently likely to pass new anti-trans laws. It looks like a lot of other states are following suit, she said. There's not going to end up being a lot of places to run to, but a lot of places to run from. What else is coming? While the ACLU has led opposition to the anti-trans efforts across the country, in Arkansas, a group called Intransitive has been leading the fight locally. The majority of trans people in the country live in the South, said Rumba Yambu, the group's director. There are lots of trans people here who have been living, resisting, organizing here for years. We just need help. According to Rio Stafford, there's currently no one in the state performing gender reassignment surgery. There is one clinic, the Gender Spectrum Clinic at Arkansas Children's Hospital in Little Rock, that serves trans adolescents. At the state Senate hearing on the trans healthcare bill, Dr. Michelle Hutchinson, the doctor in charge of the clinic, testified about the impact the legislators' work has having on patients. I'm doing everything I can to maintain my sanity here, Hutchinson said. Just after this bill passed the House, these kids hear about it. I've had multiple kids in our emergency room because of an attempted suicide, just in the last week, she told legislators. Puberty blockers are widely considered to be standard care for trans adolescents and have been endorsed by every major medical association in the United States, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the Endocrine Society, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. The only proven treatment for gender dysphoria, the term for a feeling of incongruence between a person's gender identity and assigned sex at birth, is transitioning. Before puberty, a child has no need for medical interventions, so a transition would be a different haircut, clothes, and maybe a new name and different pronoun. It's not until puberty begins at 11 or 12 that any sort of medical intervention comes into play. Puberty blockers are not permanent and help trans kids put off the permanent effects of both their natal puberty, while hormone replacement therapy is typically given to older teens and triggers a puberty consistent with their gender identity. The two-step approach is meant to put off permanent body development until the person can make a more informed decision about the future. Genital surgery before 18 is extremely rare. We witness overall such a huge rise in the visibility of trans people in this country over the past decade, said trans historian Jules Gill Peterson. And yet, she said, there's a common misconception that the existence of trans kids is fairly a new development. While researching her book, Histories of the Transgender Child, Gill Peterson found letters from trans youth to the earliest providers of hormone replacement therapy in the 1930s, begging for help in stopping their natal pubertal development. She realized that as long as there have been trans people, there have also been transgender children, and perhaps more importantly, as long as there has been transition-related care, trans adolescents have sought it out. But while the federal government has expanded access to trans medical care, conservatives on the state level have weaponized the ability of trans individuals to access care and equal rights. It's clear that right-wing politicians and an array of sorts of extremist right-wing groups have been gravitating increasingly towards trans issues, taking advantage of that cultural visibility to try and turn it into a wedge, Gill Peterson said. Now, like I said, this is going to have a lot of, unintended, well, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I shouldn't say unintended consequences. Maybe this will have intended consequences. You see, the only reason I know for, Republicans to pass laws like this and to literally go out of their way to, determine what someone does with their own bodies, I think they do intend on, watching these children commit suicide. I know that's probably, maybe an overstretch, but then again, maybe not. Maybe the Republicans want these trans people to, off themselves. And being that, these Republicans are probably extremely religious, this is a southern state, a red state, they probably think they're going to go to hell anyway. And this is pretty much their attempt. And quote me if I'm wrong. I think this is an attempt for the Republican Party to try and wipe transgender people off the face of the planet. Because let me tell you something, if they could get away with doing this in all 50 states, they would try and do this. Now, I dare them to try this shit in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, because that shit's not gonna fly. There's no way a law like that would ever get passed here. So if any of my trans friends, that are currently living in Arkansas, or if any fans are living in Arkansas, well, New Jersey's a place to go to. I mean, yeah, it's a shitty state. We're kind of corrupt, and, we have a really high cost of living, but at least you'd be safe here. I mean, this really just fucking pisses me off. I mean, I saw so many people, the other day celebrating, oh, the governor vetoed it. I'm like, I'm not so sure that veto is going to last that long. It didn't even last 24 hours. Not even 24 hours. Everybody was celebrating. I'm like, I think it's too early to celebrate. I mean, because let me tell you something. When it comes to, oppressing trans people and bullying trans people and sexually harassing trans people and doing whatever they can to make a trans person's life living hell, the Republican Party is usually the main culprits behind it. Because they will stop at nothing. And that's the thing, out of all the shit that's going on around the country, between poverty, between people losing their jobs and stuff, they're worried about transgender children. And that's the main problem I have with, religious conservatives. It's one of the main reasons why, I'm no longer religious to begin with. They spend so much time worrying about what other people are doing in the privacy of their own fucking lives. Just imagine what these kids are going through when they're going to school. And that's the thing about this, They don't want trans people to participate in sports. They don't want them using the bathroom. Now they don't want them, on puberty blockers. And then they try to use this dumbass argument where, they need to go through their puberty, or else, they'll never experience it. Well, puberty blockers are not permanent. They can be reversed. All right, the only thing that can't be reversed is reassignment surgery. But other than that, like, all you have to do is just stop taking the puberty blockers, stop taking the hormones. And their whole argument is about, trans regret. What if you regret being transgender? Well, I've actually looked at the numbers. It's actually less than 1%, like a decimal of a percentage point. So most trans people have known for like years that they were trans. They're like, hey, I'm in the wrong body. This isn't right. This should be corrected. They know. I'm pretty sure they're old enough to know. But to hold it out until they're 18, I mean, I can't even imagine having to live 18 years of being something that I'm not. So who knows what, like I said, this is going to lead to a lot of, psychological effects. If this law is passed for, I guarantee you, if this law is passed for 1 year, this is going to have a lot of devastating effects. You're going to see more people, trying to attempt suicide, more people, trying to poison themselves. Might have some gun accidents, or should I say gun accidents going off. But like I said earlier, this isn't about, protecting children like the Republican Party is saying. This is about trying to find a way to get rid of trans people. Wipe them all permanently. And what better way to do that than wipe off the children first? Now, I was looking through Twitter, and one of my followers released pictures of all of the Republicans that voted to pass this. And you notice, similar to how, all the Democrats, they got rid of the whole $15 minimum wage. Well, once again, all of these politicians have one thing in common. I want you to take a good look at this photo right here. What do all of these people have in common? I'm not going to name it for you because, like I said, I don't want to get banned or anything like that, but there's something that all of these people have in common, and you can just look at this photo and tell. Now, I know a lot of people are, adjusted to living in these southern states, low cost of living, low taxes, a lot of rural lands, but if you guys want to be safe, and, I hate to have to say this, might have to start moving out either up north or moving towards the coasts, because those are solid blue states, although I have my issues with the Democratic Party as well. I mean, I think it's safe to say that those coastal states and those northern states are less likely to, pass laws that will, go after trans people. Because the few, Republican politicians that tried it, they didn't really end up succeeding, and pretty much their whole career pretty much ended. So, I'm talking about states like New York, states like Pennsylvania, states like New Jersey, If you're talking about the other coasts, I'm talking about California, Washington, Oregon. I know these are like states that are really far away, thousands upon thousands of miles. I don't think anybody should be forced, to live something that they're not. And if moving and doing a mass exodus is what keeps the trans community safe, then I'm all for it, I mean, it's not easy for, a person to, leave their entire livelihood behind, leaving their, everything they've known. If you've grown up in a state for, 10 or 20 plus years, your entire family's there, all your friends are there, and you have to pick up, move, and start over. I don't think anybody should have to go through something like that. So, much luck to the ACLU. I really do hope they can find a way to fix this, because this is madness. Also, just to refresh your memory, a couple years ago, there was a young lady that had died by the name of Leela Alcorn. Pretty much, her parents were extremely religious, extremely conservative, extremely Christian, and they didn't believe in, transgender people. They took her to conversion camps. They denied her, puberty blockers, hormones, refused to take her to, an actual doctor. Instead, they took her to, like, Christian therapists and shit like that. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. I mean, if you want to, look into, the details of her suicide, that information is out there. But it's a really sad story. And I honestly don't want something like this to ever happen again. But that's pretty much all I have to say. If you guys have anything to add, just let me know. Now, to Governor Hutchinson, like I said, I know he's not exactly a trans ally, but he's right when he says this is an overreach of government, because this goes way, way out of line. All right, you guys stay safe, stay metal, hail Satan, and I'll try to catch you guys on the flip side.